Everybody, welcome back to American History with Mr. Finn. Today is our final wrap-up before our final, so let's get to it. These are some terms that you're going to be looking up for your assignment, but I am just, for today, not going to be taking a bunch of notes, just kind of going over some things to kind of get us caught up so you have basic information. The final itself is going to be based on decades that you will look at, and we'll have a project base, and we'll also have the normal quiz style test. I'm not exactly sure how many questions I'm going to go with quite yet, because you will have two parts to it like we've done with major tests. But as far as today, let me at least jump through a couple of things that happened after World War II. You looked up the bombing of Japan through the Manhattan Project, with atomic bombs becoming a thing that exists on this world, causing mass destruction, immediately puts an end to World War II, because as those bombs are dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japanese say, hey, there is nothing we can do to stop this. We surrender, it's over. Now, what happens because of this war is something called the Cold War, which you are going to look up and get into, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it today. And that is, Russia had been a communist country, right? We've talked about how it became a communist country, and it's much different than our capitalist society of the West, mainly England, Western Europe, excuse me, the United States. And they're their own economic system, own type of government, and they exist completely opposite than what we do. Now, at the end of World War II, what we're going to see is those differences, those two major countries, the Russia, which is now the USSR, and the United States of America, the USA, are going to compete against one another as the two world leaders in pretty much everything. And they're going to, around the globe, compete to mix into the people of the different places their ideologies, the way they think. So, for example, what we'll see in certain places like Korea is we have North Korea and South Korea. North Korea, Japanese troops had surrendered to Russia. They're going to be influenced by Russia. So in North Korea, they will install a communist regime, a communist government. In South Korea, the Japanese troops there surrendered to the United States of America. So the United States in South Korea basically took this country and split it in two, and the troops down here surrendered to the USA. USA is going to install a democracy. Up here, again, the North Koreans are going to be under a communist government. And this is kind of the way it goes around the world at this point after World War II. You have different places on the globe that now are being, manipulated by either the USSR or the USA. Hey, we'll help you, South Korea, for example. We'll give you stuff. We'll help you get on your feet. We'll give you money. Just be a democracy. Spread democracy around the world. On the other hand, you have the USSR saying the same thing to other countries. Hey, we'll help you. Just be communist and we'll help you out. So, for example, a place like Cuba. Cuba is an island in the Caribbean, 90 miles off the coast of the United States of America. The USSR will support a communist dictatorship, which is going to be under the rule of Fidel Castro. You might know that name. Fidel Castro is going to be influenced by communism. He's going to say, hey, the USSR is going to help us. I will be a communist dictator. And Cuba is now communist. So what does the United States do? The United States says, all right, no more trade with Cuba. Cuba, you get none of our business. You get none of our tourism. You get none of our stuff. We're not going to trade with you at all. So Cuba is left to depend on the USSR to give them all their stuff. And so again, this is, in essence, the Cold War. It's not a hot war. We do not go to war with the USSR. But we hate each other. We do not agree on anything. We are trying to gain power around the world in different places against one another, convince the people of different areas that the other people who are communists are no good, and the USSR is trying to say, hey, the people who are for democracy and support the United States, they're no good. And so there's conflict all over the world following World War II. You might have heard of the Vietnam War. So there's war in Vietnam. You have Korea, which ends up having the Korean War, but it settles right back to where it needs to go, which you'll look at, possibly when you do your final. So all of this is happening at the same time as the United States is dealing with issues at home following World War II. After World War II, in America, we start to see inequalities coming to the forefront. So a lot of soldiers, for example, African American soldiers who fought in World War II say, hey, I went to war, I defended this country, and then when I come back from World War II, there's these Jim Crow laws that are, hurting African Americans. There's racism. There's still the rise of the KKK. These are terrible things, and this country is not supporting me. I can't get a job. Why did I go fight for the United States when I have all this inequality here at home? What was I defending? So, in this time period of the 1950s, you start to see the civil rights movement take off, and the civil rights movement is African American leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. Are going to lead this wave of, hey, listen, we're African American. We are part of America. We deserve better. Let's, take it upon ourselves to have our voices heard. You have the March on Washington, which is the famous I Have a Dream speech with Martin Luther King Jr. You have opposition to that with someone by the name of Malcolm X, who is an African American who says, listen, we should take, our freedom. We shouldn't be, begging America to incorporate us, to bring us in. So you have this, you might have heard of Rosa Parks as well. Rosa Parks is another famous person from the civil rights movement. She was a woman who was riding on a bus in a seat that she was not supposed to be in because there was segregation, meaning, basically white people, black people don't mix. You have different drinking fountains, different restaurants, different seats on buses. We do not mix. These cultures, these races are not supposed to mix, and we'll take it across society. And so Rosa Parks says, no, listen, I am going to sit at a seat that is, specifically for white people. I'm tired. I need a seat. She's arrested. It causes a big controversy. But this is what we're dealing with here in the United States of America, is this strife of the civil rights movement. On the outside world, you have the Cold War going on. There is a lot happening in this post-World War II era of the 1950s and 60s. And so today, you're going to look at these decades for your final exam. So I'm not going to get too much past that. But what I want to do as far as finishing up, the post-war, time period is have you look up these terms, all right? We have the Cold War, the Iron Curtain, the Truman Doctrine, domino theory, the Berlin Airlift, Marshall Plan, and Mao Zedong. These are the terms that I want you to take a look at today. I am just having you do the definition of these, meaning that you are just going to tell me what they are. Each definition should be about 2 sentences. It doesn't need to be paragraphs explaining. I'm not looking for essays on every single one, just looking for definitions so that I know that you took a look at this and are familiar with it, so that as we move to the final, you can now look at certain decades and find the high points in each of them. So, as far as today goes, this is your assignment. Next class, we're going to have the quiz, and no, it's not a quiz, it's the final. Together, it's the final. The final exam and the final exam project that go together to give you your final exam grade. But today, turn these definitions into me. And on that note, I guess I'll see you for the final.